Today we will have a talk on the bull Premum. It's going to be a little bit a technical talk. That's why I have given you some documents. We have 4 documents that I will go over with you. That way it will be easier for you to follow what I'm doing. I'm going to do a bit of reading because I had announced to you that we would look at Premum in detail. That is what we're going to do today. And as we go through this, we will see also the Constitution of Pope Paul VI promulgating the new Mass in 1969. And the study of these documents will be a clarification, an example, a proof of the wisdom of St. Pius X, whose feast will be in a couple of days. St. Pius X in Pascendi, his great encyclical on modernism, St. Pius X said, what is the first step in order to stop, in order to, what was the first remedy to modernism? The first remedy is good philosophy. And it means scholastic philosophy. The philosophy of St. Thomas. And today will be a proof of this. Because at Vatican II, as Professor Dorman mentioned in one of his books, Professor Dorman wrote 3 books to try to understand how did John Paul II arrive at the meeting of Assisi, meeting of all the religions in Assisi. So he wrote different books. The first of his books stops at the election of John Paul II. So he looks at the role of John Paul II at Vatican II and in the 70s up to 78. And when Professor Dorman speaks about Vatican II, he says one of the first act of Vatican II was to eliminate St. Thomas. And St. Thomas and the scholastic language. St. Thomas is a toolbox. You have to understand, when we speak about philosophy, the word scholastic, which is the philosophy of the school of St. Thomas, the medieval philosophy, it's a way of speaking. It's a way of dealing with anything, whether we're talking about flowers or dogmas or canon law. The scholastic philosopher will define the words he uses. Well, he's a good teacher. He's going to bring up a notion, he will explain the notion. If a word has many meanings, he will say so. For example, we're going to talk about freedom. Well, what kind of freedom? There's the physical freedom, there's psychological freedom, there's moral freedom. What do you mean by freedom? Well, the good teacher will explain it. So, are we free to tell lies? Well, you need to make distinctions. Okay, if I can speak, yes, I have the physical freedom to tell a lie, and I can choose, or when I have a temptation, I can decide, well, will I not? And I can choose not to tell the lie or tell the lie. That's psychological freedom, but I don't have the right to tell a lie. That's called a sin. I don't have that fundamental, natural right to sin. in English you'd say, I can sin, but I may not do so. Okay? So, scholastic philosophers will be very clear. That applies in dogmas, it applies in the moral law, and it applies in canon law. And what we will see today will corroborate, will even accentuate the wisdom of St. Pius X. He said we have to go back to St. Thomas. And I will prove to you that it's not just philosophy, it is a mindset. It is a way of dealing with things. The problem we're having with Pope Francis right now is exactly that. It is flu. You say flu in English?
Vague.
Vague. It's ambiguous. It can be interpreted in different ways. And he does not want to define the question of by what authority is he speaking. It's not clear. When you look at St. Pius V, you'll see it's so beautiful. It's like the difference between this magnificent sunset with the different colors and the rays of sun coming through the clouds and the colors of the sky is so clear compared to a foggy landscape where you can't see anything. It's there, yeah, but there's fog. You can't see, you can't discern. So modernism has affected canon law, the law of the church. And one of the first example of this is the new Mass. And in order for you to understand what I'm saying, we will, in the first part of this conference, I will read with you Quo Premum, just to have a notion of what Quo Premum is. I will highlight a few words. If you have a pen, please, you will have to highlight them because you will understand. At the conclusion, he goes back to the full text, so I will show you some words you need to highlight. And then we will read Missale Romanum, which is the document of Paul VI. I will not comment too much because it's not really the purpose, but just by a reading, you will see the whole mind is different. And the whole mind, and you'll see the modernist mind, which will use also similar things, but use in a different way, with a different meaning. And they will start the same, but they end up with a different conclusion. And typical modernism. And we see that in Missale Romanum. It's frightening. It's really, but this is 1969. Archbishop Lefebvre saw that in 1969. That's why he opposed it. He was part of this, the Ottaviani intervention document, because he saw it in 69. That's why the Society of St. Pius X never took and will never take the new Mass, because of what we will see today, among other things. Today we will look at the new Mass from the angle of the old Mass, but on the canonical aspect. We have seen the history of the Mass. We have seen the spirituality of the Mass and the Passion in these different talks. Today we're looking at the legal aspect, but the mindset is the same. The tradition is very clear, solid. It's a rock. The new is wishy-washy. It's quicksand. We don't really know what. So, 3 parts. First, a reading of the 2 texts with very slight commentary. First part. Second part will be the second document that you have, actually the third document you have in your hands, from the Asian newsletter of September 1997. We will look at this. This is the legal status of the traditional Latin Mass. This will highlight 3 points of Quo Premum. It will be a approach to canonical vocabulary. We talk about law, custom, and privilege. These three words. You cannot understand Pro Primum without knowing these three words. A law, a custom, and a privilege. And then, in the third part, we will look at we'll come back on Quo Primum with the help of a famous traditional French priest called Father Raymond Dulac, who he died in the 70s. I don't have the year of his death, but it was in, I would say, late 70s. He was a canon lawyer. He studied in a French seminary with Archbishop Lefebvre. And when a new Mass came out, he says, whoa. And he wrote this study in 1972 precisely about the question, has Quo Primum been abolished by the new Mass? And he will add more details to the third article that we will read together. Second part. Okay, I repeat. First part, we will read Quo Primum and Missale Romanum, one after the other. Then we'll have a first canonical look at Quo Primum, second part. And the third part will be another look at Quo Primum with more details. So let's begin with the reading of Quo Primum. So this is issued, it's in 2 pages. It all fits in 2 pages. By the way, as we go along, I encourage you to number the paragraphs. I forgot to put it here, but please put a number of each paragraph because I will refer to that later on. So the date is always given at the end of the document, and here is the 14th of July, 1570. He says, the 5th year of our pontificate. 5th year, 1570, which means St. Pius V was elected in 1565. And we will see from the first paragraph, like St. Pius X, he did not waste time as a pope. So the word Quo Primum in English means from the very first. That's a translation. From the very first moment of our elevation. So let's read Quo Primum. I'll read it. And I took this translation. There are different translations. I took this one from the website papalencyclicals.net. From the very first, upon our elevation to the chief apostleship, we gladly turned our mind and energies and directed all our thoughts to those matters which concern the preservation of a pure liturgy. Stop. St. Pius X will do the same thing. His first pontifical act after the first encyclical will be the reform of Gregorian chant. And he begins almost with the same words as St. Pius V. I continue. And we strove, so in the last 5 years, with God's help, by every means in our power, to accomplish this purpose. So all our mind and all our energies, remember the first commandment, to love God with all our heart, our mind, our strength, our spirit. 4. So what have we done in the last 5 years? Besides other decrees of the Sacred Council of Trent, there were stipulations for us. So the Council of Trent said, the next Pope will have to do this. To revise and re-edit the sacred books, plural. The Catechism, the Missal, and the Breviary. The Council of Trent went from 1545 to 1563. It was long. It was 18 years. They had a session, they stopped, everybody went home. They came back 2 years later, they had a second session, they stopped, they went home. Went home means by horseback to go from Rome to England, Rome to Ireland, Rome to Poland. I mean, these are big trips. So, over 18 years, they had 23 sessions. So, they stopped in January 1563. With a catechism published for the instruction of the faithful by God's help. So the catechism, the year is 1566. Notice St. Pius V, within the first year, published what we call the Catechism of the Council of Trent. Within the first year of his pontificate. And the breviary, thoroughly revised for the worthy praise of God, 1568. 2 years later was the breviary. 66 the catechism, 68 the breviary. In order, and he continues, that the missal and breviary may be in perfect harmony as fitting and proper, it is most becoming that there be in the church only one appropriate manner of reciting psalms and only one rite for the celebration of Mass. There must be a unity, because the breviary is like the halo of the Mass, the divine office. We deemed it necessary to give our immediate attention to what still remained to be done, that is, the re-editing of the Missal as soon as possible. So, Catechism, Breviary, Missal. Paragraph number 2. Hence, we decided to entrust this work to learned men of our selection. So in this paragraph, you have an historical application of what is tradition. How do we know what is tradition? Well, here it is. These select learned men very carefully collated all their work with the ancient codices, so the manuscript, the ancient books, manuscripts, in our Vatican library, and with reliable, preserved, or amended codices from elsewhere. They went across the monasteries of Europe. Some monasteries, like in Ireland, from the 7th century, monasteries in Monte Cassino, St. Benedict's time, and so on, the 4th century, 5th century. Besides this, so manuscripts, so called codices. Besides these codices, these men consulted the works of ancient and approved authors concerning the same sacred rites, the sermons of the fathers of the church, the writing of the fathers of the church, sermon on the Mass, or where they make a reference to the Mass, like this. Or the liturgy, the various feasts, the feast, like a sermon of the saints. Today is the Feast of the Assumption, or a calendar. So they make reference to all these documents. And thus, they have restored. You can underline the word restored. The missal, it's like an old piece of furniture. You remove all the layers of paint and you find the old wood, the ancient wood. They have restored the missal itself to the original form and rite of the Holy Father. When this work has been gone over numerous times and further amended, so they did it, they revised. Different teams looked at the work that was done. After serious study and reflection, we commanded that the finished product be printed and published as soon as possible, so that all might enjoy the fruits of this labor. And thus, priests would know which prayers to use and which rites and ceremonies they were required to observe from now on in the celebration of Mass. The aim, St. Pius V, we saw that in our talk on the history of the Mass. The aim of St. Pius V, in fact, in more precise words, was to find back the Mass as it was under Pope St. Gregory the Great who died in 604. St. Gregory the Great had done the same thing to find the Mass of Pope St. Leo the Great in around 440. And Pope St. Leo the Great was after the 300 years of persecutions. He had the Mass of the Apostles. So it's a bridge with different pillars. We have the Apostles, St. Leo the Great of the 5th century, St. Gregory, beginning of the 7th century, and then there's 900 years to the Council of Trent. So we just want to make sure we are on the same bridge. That's what he's saying, that we connect to the Apostles. So it is very clearly a restoration. Well, I'm not going to add. He did some minor adjustment, for example, the prayers at the foot of the altar. But they have been said for centuries in different parts. But he said from now on everybody's going to say the last gospel. It's going to be part of the Mass from now on. Because it has been done in lots of places, we're going to unify it. Okay? But the argument was always, what did they do in the past? What was the most common liturgy in the past? Paragraph 3. And now you'll see the binding aspect of Quo Premum begins. Let all, everywhere, adopt and observe what has been handed down by the Holy Roman Church, the mother and teacher of the other churches. So here we have the authority of... so here's the general principle, and we'll see in greater details in the following paragraphs. And let masses not be sung or read according to any other formula than that of this missal published by us. This ordinance, underline the word ordinance. This ordinance applies henceforth. Ordinance like an order, but is a special canonical word. Now and forever. So time, throughout all the provinces of the Christian world, places, to all patriarchs, cathedral churches. Patriarch here is a patriarchate, if you want. Cathedral churches, collegiate and parish churches, be they secular or religious, both of men and women, even of military orders, and of churches or chapels without a specific congregation, in which conventual masses are sung aloud, in choir, or read privately, in accord with the rites and customs of the Roman Church. So, monasteries where they have 500 priests, but 499 priests say Mass privately in the small chapels, the altars in the morning, and there'll be one community Mass, which is called conventual Mass. The word conventual means here the community Mass. But it's one priest at the altar. All the other priests have said their Mass privately since 4 o'clock in a different altar. There was a monastery in Portugal, in Alcobaça, not far from Fatima, where around the year 1000, there were 1,000 priests in that monastery. 1,000 priests. But they had one community Mass. All the other priests said Mass privately. That's what he's referring to. So, he speaks of conventual Mass, which are public Masses, or privately. This missal is to be used, underline is to be used. Utendus. By all churches, even by those which in their authorization are made exempt, whether by apostolic indult, custom, or privilege, or even if by oath or official confirmation of the Holy See, or have their rights and faculties guaranteed to them by any other manner whatsoever. So he's going to aim at everybody who can claim any right to say Mass differently. And we're going back to square one. I'm the Pope, and I'm removing all rights and privileges and customs beside this, what we are establishing today. Paragraph 4. This new right alone is to be used unless approval of the practice of saying Mass differently was given at the very time of the institution and confirmation of the Church by Apostolic See at least 200 years ago, or unless there has prevailed a custom of a similar kind which has been continuously followed for a period of not less than 200 years, in which most cases we in no wise rescind their above-mentioned prerogative or custom. So the only custom, the only rites of Mass we will accept beside this one are those who are older than 200 years, and prove it to me. And there's a number of them. The Dominican Rite, this is 1570, so medieval in Milan, and the Lyon in France. In Ireland, the Sarum Rite, you have a Mozarabic Rite, or the Maronite Rite, different rites. Where are we? Here. However, if this missal, but he says, those of you who have a missal which is older than 200 years, you may keep your privilege. You may. But you may want to take this missal as well. Okay? However, if this missal, which we have seen fit to publish, be more agreeable to these latter, if you want to be more in line with the Roman Church, we grant them permission to celebrate, underline permission, to celebrate Mass according to its rite, the rite of this missal, provided they have the consent of their bishop or prelate or of their whole chapter, everything else to the contrary notwithstanding. So here's a Franciscan who has a missal which is older than 200 years old. And he says, I would like to say the Mass according to what the missal Pope Pius V just issued, but his superior says no. Well, then he cannot. He must have permission of his superior for the unity of the community. Or if the whole chapter, also the chapter of the community, okay? But they may accept both. We keep the old missal, but those who would like to say Mass according to the Tridentine Rite, you may do so. Turn the page, paragraph 5. All other of the churches referred to above, there was a whole list in a previous paragraph, however, are hereby denied, you can underline denied, the use of other missals, which are to be discontinued entirely and absolutely. So if your missal is less than 200 years old, you get rid of it. It's forbidden. Whereas by this present constitution, which will be valid henceforth, now and forever, we order and enjoin, underline that, order and enjoin, 2 words, that nothing must be added to our recently published missal, nothing omitted from it, nor anything whatsoever be changed, so he cannot add, cannot omit, or cannot change within it under the penalty of our displeasure. Underline penalty. Paragraph 6. We specifically command, underline command. And here we have the people. So we've seen now and forever, time, everywhere in the world, space, and now we have the people. Each and every patriarch, and there's a whole list here, administrator, and all other persons, whatsoever ecclesiastical dignity they may be they even cardinals. I'm a cardinal of, no, it doesn't matter. I'm the Pope, I'm above you, okay? Of the Holy Roman Church, even a cardinal right here in Rome, in the Vatican, no? Or possessed of any other rank or preeminence. And we order, underline order, we order them in virtue of holy obedience to chant or to read the Mass according to the rite and manner and norm herewith laid down by us, and hereafter to discontinue and completely discard all other rubrics and rites of other missals, however ancient, which they have customarily followed. And they must not, in celebrating Mass, presume to introduce any ceremonies or recite any prayers other than those contained in this missal. So he repeats a little bit to what he said in the previous paragraph. Paragraph 7. This is an inspired paragraph. You don't want to. Okay. Paragraph 7. So it's pretty strong. What we have seen so far, pretty strong. Furthermore, by these presents, in other words, this law, in virtue of our apostolic authority, we grant and concede, underline these two words separately, grant and concede, in perpetuity, that for the chanting or reading of the Mass in any church whatsoever, this missal is hereafter to be followed absolutely, without any scruple of conscience or fear of incurring any penalty, judgment, or censure, and may be freely and lawfully be used. May freely be and lawfully be used. Underline that. May. The word may be used. I'm telling you right now. So you have this one. We'll see in the second part. We command, we order, we demand, okay? There's a law. And now he's saying, you may. It's a different category. This is what we call a privilege. So, he's adding another foundation to what he's saying. Nor are superiors, administrators, canon, chaplains, and other secular priests or religious, or whatsoever title designated, obliged to celebrate the Mass otherwise than as enjoined by us. So nobody. So here, what he's saying is that everybody may use this missal. No superior can force a priest to use another missal besides this. So that's what we call a privilege. We likewise declare and ordain, underline that, declare and ordain, 2 words, that no one whosoever is forced or coerced to alter this missal. It's the same thing here, is you cannot be forced or changed, and that this present document cannot be revoked or modified, but remain always valid and retain its full force, notwithstanding the previous constitution and decrees of the Holy See, as well as any general or special constitutions. And now he's going to give all the different kind of canonical ground, okay, that a document may have. So, constitution, decrees, as well as any general, special constitutions or edicts of provincial or synodal councils, and notwithstanding the practice and custom. So he says any other custom. That's going to be, we'll see in the second part, the notion of custom of the aforesaid churches established by long and immemorial prescription, except, however, if more than 200 years standing. So we have, we'll see in the second part, law, privileges, and customs. And here you can see he explicitly speaks of long and immemorial prescription or custom. He says, I'm abolishing these by name. And that's part of how a bishop pope has to speak. Unless it is more than 200 years old. Paragraph 8. It is our will, underline the word will. Therefore, and by the same authority we decree, underline the word decree, that after we publish this constitution and the edition of the missal, the priest of the... Now, here he's going to, in this paragraph 8, speak about the promulgation. When will this law begin to be obligatory? That's called the promulgation of the law. When does it start to be enforced? So, the priest of the Roman Curia. So, in Rome, after 30 days, obliged to chant or read the Mass according to it, All others south of the Alps, so up to Torino, Venice, south of the Alps, after 3 months. And those beyond the Alps, either within 6 months or whenever the missal is available for sale. Wherefore, in order that the missal be preserved incorrupt. So in the first part of this paragraph, you have the time. When it's become obligatory. Now he's going to talk about the printers who are going to print this. In order to print a missal, you must be an approved printer. Where am I? Wherefore, in order that the missal be preserved incorrupt throughout the world, the whole world, and keep free of flaws and errors, the penalty, underlying penalty, for non-observance for printers, whether immediately or immediately subject to our dominion. So there's printers that are in the papal states, which go from Rome to across Italy to south of Venice, okay? So that's the dominion, or those outside. And that of the Holy Roman Church, all over the world. The penalty will be the forfeiting of their books and a fine of 100 gold ducats, payable ipso facto to the apostolic treasury. So there's a fine. Printers will have a ticket, okay, if they print something else, if they change the missal. Just like the Protestants were doing with the Bible. The Protestants were changing the Bible. That's why the printer had to be approved by the church to make sure that, okay, we trust that printer. We know he's Catholic and he's doing the right job. Same thing here. Further, as for those located in other parts of the world, the penalty is excommunication late sententiae. So in other words, automatic excommunication. And such are the penalties as may in our judgment be imposed. And we decree, you can, if you want, underline decree, although we had it on the first line of this paragraph, by this law, that they must not dare presume either to print or to publish or to sell or in any way to accept books of this nature without our approval and consent, or without the express consent of the apostolic commissaries of those places, so the local bishop, who will be appointed by us, or commissaries, so there'll be priests sent by the Pope to check the edition of each of the missals, who will be appointed by us. Said printers must receive a standard missal and agree faithfully with it, and in no wise vary from the Roman missal of the large type, secundum magnum impressionem. So, printers will receive a template, and they have to copy this. Paragraph 9. What about here in Rome? So, that's very nice, but okay, where do we find this text? According to previous paragraph, since it would be difficult for this present pronouncement to be sent to all parts of the world, there's no internet then, and the Christian world, and simultaneously come to light everywhere, we direct that it be, as usual, posted and published at the doors of the Basilica of the Prince of the Apostles. So, at the Vatican, there's a bulletin board, and they will put that on the bulletin board. So anybody coming can read it. Also at the Apostolic Chancery and on the street at Campo Flora in another building. It will be posted. Furthermore, we direct that printed copies of this same edict, so this is the bull called Premum. So we have the missal and we have the bull. There's two different things. We direct that printed copies of this same edict signed by a notary public and made official by an ecclesiastical dignitary possess the same indubitable validity everywhere and in every nation, as if our manuscript were shown there. Of course, Pope St. Pius V will sign one document, and others will make copies of it. The printing press is just out, the Gutenberg press. So, and people will check, make sure that they printed correctly, and a priest, a church notary will sign, okay, this letter is fine. They copied everything, it's okay. In Latin, of course. Therefore, no one, whoever, is permitted to alter this notice of our... Now, if you can write small, we have 11 expressions here. Are permission, number 1. Statute, number 2. Ordinance, number 3. Command, number 4. Precept, number 5. Grant, number 6. Indult, number 7. Declaration, number 8. Will, number 9. Decree, number 10. Prohibition, number 11. That is what I got you to underline in the text. These are all words he has used to give force of law to this document. Would anyone, however, presume to commit such an act as to change, to alter this bull quo primum, okay, or the missal? He should know that he will incur the wrath of Almighty God and of the blessed apostles Peter and Paul. Paragraph 10, given at St. Peter's in the year of the Lord and his incarnation, 1517, the 14th of July of the 5th year of our pontificate. But by the way, I forgot to say here, paragraph 9, the third last line, when you have here this notice just before permission, that's the bull. Okay, the word notice here, it's this text. Okay, that's this bull. That's the way the church spoke.